Good day, friends, and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about inflation. We're going to understand inflation. It's also called the silent wage erosion. So, if you want to learn more about this, be sure to watch this video until the end. I promise you, there's lots of value here. Be sure to like and subscribe, okay, and also share this video to whomever it feels who benefits from it. And so, let's dive right in. Inflation. Understanding inflation. Have you ever wondered why your grandparents talked about how things was relatively cheaper in their time and now it's a little bit more expensive? Well, that's inflation at work. This is the persistent increase in the price of goods and services over time. This causes your currency to lose purchasing power. In today's economic landscape, understanding inflation isn't just for economics, it's essential knowledge for everybody, especially if you're in a position to make financial decisions. And so it's important that you understand what inflation is and its impact. So in this presentation, we're going to explore what causes inflation, how the government attempts to control it, and we're going to also talk about the surprising complex effects it can have on our economy. We'll examine different types of inflation, measurement methods, and the delicate between healthy economic stimulus and destructive hyperinflation. So I hope you're prepared for this because there's a lot of stuff to learn here. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is inflation? Inflation represents a sustained increase in the price of nearly all the goods and services in the economy, not just isolated price changes in specific products. A sustained increase in the price of nearly all the goods and services in an economy. That is inflation. Purchasing power reduction. Inflation directly reduces what your money can buy, meaning that $100 today will purchase fewer goods than it used to do in the past. So it reduces your purchasing power. It is also measured as a percentage change. Most countries track inflation annually. They express it as a percentage change that shows how much prices have risen relative to the previous period. Unlike relative price changes that affect just one or two goods, inflation is a widespread, persistent phenomenon that affects the entire economy over extended periods. What are the main causes of inflation? There are three main causes of inflation. One is the demand pull inflation. When a consumer demand exceeds what is available, then you're going to have inflation. I repeat, when consumer demands exceeds what is available as supply, then you're going to have demand pull inflation. There's also cost push inflation. This is when production cost increases and are passed to consumers. I repeat, when production cost increases and are passed to consumers, then you have cost push inflation. You also have built-in inflation, when expectations of future inflation drives price increases. Okay, so three main causes that we talked about: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, and built-in inflation. Demand pull inflation occurs when economic improvements lead consumers to spend more, exceeding what is available. Built-in inflation creates a dangerous circle. This is very different because workers expect prices to rise, so they demand higher wages, for example, and this causes businesses to do what? To raise their prices further, perpetuating the circle. It can also mean, for example, that businesses anticipate that the price of things, especially manufacture cost, is going to increase, and so for that reason they tend to increase it, right? So now we've talked about the three types of inflation, so the three main causes of inflation: the demand pull inflation, where the demand pulls the inflation, and the cost push inflation, and then the built-in inflation. I hope you're with me so far. Now, how do governments combat this? How do governments combat inflation? One is identity problem. They measure inflation using indexes like CPI in order to determine the severity of the inflation. And then what they do is they raise the interest rate. So they make borrowing more expensive in order to reduce consumer spending. Another thing they do is to adjust the money supply. They implement quantitative tightening in order to reduce currency in circulation. They also have fiscal policy changes where they adjust government spending and taxation in order to influence demand. Central banks like the Federal Reserve play a very crucial role in controlling inflation through monetary policies. By raising the interest rates, they make borrowing more expensive, which discourages spending and investment, ultimately cooling an overheated economy. When interest rates increase, saving becomes more attractive, while credit becomes less appealing. Government can also implement fiscal policies like increasing tax incomes in order to reduce disposable income. Through this approach, they risk public backlash and must be carefully balanced. Now, how is inflation measured? We have what is called the Consumer Price Index. The Consumer Price Index tracks price changes in a basket of goods and services commonly purchased by households. Now, this weighted average provides a snapshot of how prices are changed across the economy. The CPI of about 100 might be set as a baseline, right, for a specific year. If 2 years later the CPI is 110, you can conclude that the price has risen by 10% over this period. There's also a data collection process. Organizations such as the Bureau of Labor Statistics collect prices from retailers worldwide. Data is weighted based on consumer spending patterns. There are regular updates that track how prices change over time, and also historical comparisons in order to reveal the inflation trend. So, while no measurement is perfect, the CPI provides government with essential data to make informed policy decisions. The goal isn't necessarily zero inflation. The small amount is actually considered healthy, but rather the goal is to keep it at a manageable level that promotes economic stability. What are the advantages of controlled inflation? One is that it stimulates spending. Low inflation encourages consumers to buy now rather than wait, as their money will have less purchasing power in the future. This increases spending. Okay, and this increased spending also stimulates economic growth and drives economic activity. It also promotes borrowing and investment. So businesses are more willing to take on loans in order to expand their business, knowing that they will repay with money in the future that is lesser in value than what they actually borrowed. This facilitates business growth and job creation across the economy. It also prevents deflation. Moderate inflation helps avoid deflation, where prices continually fall. That is deflation. So while falling prices might sound appealing, deflation often leads to reduced economic activity as consumers delay purchases, expecting even lower prices tomorrow. So a little inflation seems positive. Controlled inflation, typically targeting around 2% annually, provides a safer buffer against economic shocks and gives central banks room to adjust monetary policies when needed. It also allows businesses to gradually increase wages and prices, maintaining economic flexibility. Okay, so now let's talk about the dark side of inflation. If inflation is unchecked, it can devastate economies and individual finances. When inflation spirals out of control, it can lead to hyperinflation. Hyperinflation has to do with if the price is increasing in excess of 50% each month, then you have a problem. So if inflation spirals out of control, it can actually lead to this. This has historically destroyed currencies and economies. For example, in Venezuela and Zimbabwe. High inflation creates economic uncertainty. It discourages economic investment. It encourages economic growth. So it disproportionately impacts those who are on fixed income, such as retirees, people who have been saving their money, who have been watching their nest eggs lose purchasing power. Critics also argue that government intervention through money creation undermines natural economic principles because government can print a lot of money as they wish. And that is a problem. So now, let's bring this down to the cryptocurrency concept. Inflation in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin has a cap of say 21 million Bitcoin. These are designed to resist inflation. This stands in stark contrast to fiat currencies that can be printed indefinitely by central banks. So cryptocurrencies have a fixed supply, and also cryptocurrencies have a store of value proposition. So Bitcoin, for example, and some other digital currencies are positioned as digital gold. They are positioned as assets that can potentially preserve its purchasing power during periods of high inflation or currency devaluation. They can also serve as inflation resistant investments. During the high inflation period of 2021 to 2022, many investors found the cryptocurrencies as potential hedges against inflation. Though this thesis remain actively debated among economists. Right, even today, countries like Nigeria, a lot of people are using cryptocurrencies as a way to hedge against inflation. The relationship between cryptocurrency and inflation highlights the ongoing evolution of our monetary systems. So while traditional economies they seek to balance inflation for economic stability, cryptocurrencies offer an alternative paradigm, one where monetary policy is determined by code rather than central authorities. As inflation concerns persist globally, understanding both traditional inflation dynamics and emerging alternatives becomes increasingly important for informed financial decision making. So that's why we said at the beginning that this isn't just for economics, this is for everybody who has a financial decision to make, and I hope that you got value from this. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to turn on notifications so that you will know when I post my next video. If you have any comments on this, be sure to drop on the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.